So we're going to talk about roadmaps, which you might think are kind of the opposite of outcome thinking, like in OKRs. But hold that thought, and we will perhaps revisit that assumption. First, just a little bit about me. I'm Bruce McCarthy. I'm the founder of Product Culture. And I got into this job of helping companies all around the world at getting better at product development by doing kind of every job within that whole complex. I was a product manager all the way up from IC to VP. I have done engineering management and design and partnerships and agile enablement, marketing, sales, you name it. I have done it. And so my perspective is one of integration, of bringing all those functions together to deliver value. And that's what I think OKRs are for, as Nuno and Sada very clearly stated. I think that's what roadmaps are for too. And so let's take a closer look at that. I want to start, though, by reflecting on where we are as an industry, as a software industry, as a tech industry. Google is kind of famous for killing its own products. They seem to do it every other week. And I did a little bit of a search on canceled products, and I just got this incredible crawl from Google itself of one after another of products that have been discontinued, canceled, failed, you name it. And then I even found some statistics about this. The Standish Group does a study every few years on the software industry, and it turns out that out of all the features and products and so on that we ship as an industry, the tech industry as a whole, we have a worse than 50-50 success rate. Less than half of the features that we ship are frequently used. So I got to ask, why do we so consistently, as a bunch of smart people who are clearly working very hard to make customers happy, why do we keep making the wrong thing? I mean, we know, we've been taught by the lean startup movement that we're supposed to go through this build, measure, learn loop, right? That we're supposed to test our way to success. But if we're honest with ourselves, most of us really do this. We build and ship and build and ship and build and ship some more. And we don't go back really to examine what we did and whether it helped and why maybe it didn't. And so I think that roadmaps actually get a lot of the bad rap for this. There's tons of articles all over the internet about why product roadmaps are a train wreck, why they suck, why teams that think roadmap first fail, and why, of course, you should use their proprietary planning method instead, or why they're just a waste of time. And that frustration with trying to project out what you're doing, I think, was best explained by David Cancel, who is CEO of Drift, a company here in Boston in the marketing automation space, and former head of product for a big Boston area company. He said, roadmaps are kind of a no-win scenario. Either I'm going to disappoint you by shipping what I thought 6 months ago was a good idea when it's not anymore, or by changing my mind, in which case I have lied to you. So, as a product person, we're all in the dilemma of either I'm going to be stupid or I'm going to be a liar. Take your pick. Neither one of those really sounds great to me. And I teach workshops on how to do roadmaps well all over the world. And I ask people to sort of unburden themselves of their frustrations with roadmaps. I ask them to write a dear roadmap letter, a breakup letter with their road mapping process. And I've collected hundreds of these. And here's my favorite one. Dear roadmap, I've been putting in so much energy to get this relationship working, but it feels like I only give and never get any value back from you. You're always out of date. There's no way to get all the information in and keep it looking nice and readable. You're all about solutions and not about the needs and the problems. You're never good enough for all my stakeholders. That's it. I'm going back to Microsoft Project, which, for a product manager, we pride ourselves on being not the same thing as a project manager. This is quite the admission that roadmaps are not serving us. They're not doing the job. I discovered that myself. My very first roadmap, I'm going to share it with you now. It's painful to remember. I spent weeks on this thing. I worked all the details. I got all the estimates. I did all the analysis, and I produced this incredibly detailed deck. Here is a snapshot from it. You can see I have 3 different swim lanes for different parts of the product. I have everything worked out quarter by quarter. I have all of the technical details about co-browse and page peak and rules performance enhancements. And I even have a key for all the acronyms that I put in and a footnote to explain some of the details. And if that wasn't enough, I even had pop-ups in PowerPoint to give more detail so that the reader could really get everything that they wanted out of it. I presented this to all of my colleagues, and I kind of got this. Kind of got like, yeah, okay, whatever. Nobody really took much of anything away from it. They were kind of like, well, I guess you worked hard, but there was no clear story. There was no statement of value. There was no inspiring vision of the future. So I kind of lost faith. I guess I decided roadmaps suck. They're a waste of time. I'm just going to go back to the build, measure, learn loop and be agile and not have any specific statement of strategy or direction. But I also interviewed another guy for my book on roadmaps. This guy here, Jeff Busgang, general partner at Flybridge Capital, a VC, and a former product manager. And he convinced me that you cannot build a great company or a great product unless you have a strategy. And that strategy has to be communicated somehow in the form of a roadmap. And that was the clue to me that maybe I was thinking wrong about roadmaps. Maybe I had the wrong idea. And I asked myself, well, what is a roadmap anyway? What's the job to be done with a roadmap? And it turns out that if you think about it right, a roadmap is not the same thing as a release plan or a project plan. It's not a bunch of features and dates. Not at all. Let me give you an example. This is a real company called Wodify in the US, and they're trying to drag kind of into the 21st century, a very low-tech business, and that's gyms, where you go to work out. They're trying to high-techify the gym business, and they thought it would be really good to share with their customers their roadmap. So they actually put it out on their public-facing website to try to get a dialogue going with their customers. So here was it. They thought, okay, we're going to tell them all about Wodify Pulse and Leads Insights and Wodify Rise, and it'll create a great dialogue, but it didn't. Actually, it created a lot of confusion initially. People were like, what the heck is Leads Insights, and why is it late? It says December 30th, but you haven't shipped it yet. And that confusion did not really help out their relationships the way they hoped. They started talking to the customers about what they really wanted to know, and they realized that the critical information was not the name of a feature and a date, but the critical missing information they began to supply beneath all of those details. So they changed what was on their website. They made the cards so that they could flip over and provide insight into what problem that roadmap item was trying to solve. And then you may have noticed that a bunch of these actually don't have specific dates, but simply say, coming soon. They decided not to publish any dates until they were 100% confident in a particular date. or at least 90% confidence. They took the dates out and they provided information about what problem was being solved. So if you start asking yourself, well, if we take out the dates and we take out the commitments to specific features, what's left in a roadmap? What do we need to communicate that's not those things? Well, I think a roadmap is not, if it's not a release plan, then it is more of a strategic communication tool. Jana Basto, CEO of ProdPad, says that it's a prototype of your product strategy that you're putting out there to start a dialogue with your customers, just the way the folks at Wodify wanted to do. It's a statement of intent and direction, but it's less like a set of turn-by-turn directions written down for you and unchangeable, and more like a GPS. I mean, think about how we use GPSs, right? We tell it the destination, the place we want to get to, and then sure, it gives us turn-by-turn directions, but it adjusts if we run into traffic, if we run into construction, if we run into a detour, if we decide to stop off for pizza, it's constantly recalculating the best route from here now to the destination that we gave it. And a roadmap should be more flexible and goal-oriented than that. It should be more about objectives, I think. If you think about it, your roadmap manages to those longer-term outcomes that you're seeking for the customer and for your business, whereas a release plan or a project plan or a program, they manage the outputs. Now, there's obviously a relationship here. They're tied together. One reinforces the other. One in each informs the other, but they serve different roles. They're complementary. They're separate. They're both necessary. Now, you might be wondering, how do I picture that? Is there a particular format that you can put this into, a template, something like that? And we actually resisted putting together a template for the roadmaps book that I wrote with O'Reilly some years back, because we saw so many examples in different formats, in spreadsheets, Kanban boards, slide decks, 5-page memos, whatever, we realized it was more about the content than about the form. So my co-authors and I, we derived 5 key components of a good product roadmap. These are them here, and I'm going to go through each one in just a little bit of detail. So it starts, just like good OKRs, with a product vision. And our feeling about a product vision is not like a technical description of the phone or what have you. It's more about who's the customer and how do they benefit or will benefit when your product is fully realized. Let me give you some examples. Google, you probably all know, is fairly well known for their mission statement of organizing all the data in the world to make it accessible for everyone in a useful way. Less well known is that they have similar statements for all of their major products. Chrome, the browser, is to provide a fast, simple, and secure browser for everyone to experience the modern web. YouTube, to give everyone a voice and show them the world. And Android, to provide them access mobile anywhere, anytime to all that information. Not only do they all tie together neatly like that, but they all name the customer, pretty much everyone, and the benefit, and a little bit about how they achieve that benefit to give you a sense of the differentiator. Recently, Dropbox changed their company mission statement to this here: unleash the world's creative energy by designing a more enlightened way of working. That's very high-minded. Again, it cites everyone as the customer. It's a little bit vague, but when they tie it together with their product vision to transform the share folder into a collaborative workspace, it suddenly makes sense. That you can even see a path that only they can really follow to make this happen. That's a compelling product vision in my mind. So that's where it starts, and something that a lot of roadmaps kind of leave out. Where it goes next is another place that I think a lot of roadmaps tend to forget, which is business outcomes. Business outcomes are the business results for your company of the things that are on the roadmap. Things like revenue or margin or growth or market share or conversion rates, all these things, all these businessy things that we tend to leave out of our roadmaps are really important for explaining why we're focusing on the things that we're focusing on and what is the expected result of doing these things, that we can measure the success of our roadmap initiatives against. Each phase of a product's lifecycle tends to have a different set of objectives. Broadly speaking, products go through a lifecycle of development where they're kind of bouncing along, and then they enter a growth phase once they hit product market fit, and then they often top out in their growth, plateau in their growth at some point when they become mature because they've saturated the market or they've reached some sort of equilibrium with their competitors. And it turns out that you can actually classify the business objectives as fitting into each of these different stages of life. And they're not all that complicated or mysterious. There aren't an infinite number of possible business objectives. At the highest level, there are really only these 10 that fit into these 3 categories. So usually you are either still in the development phase and trying to establish the core value, or you are growing by one means or another, fulfilling demand, growing market share, increasing the amount you charge, or you are trying to extract profit by extending customer lifetime, lowering the cost to serve, et cetera. Usually you're not trying to do things in multiple categories at once unless you're kind of transitioning from one to the next. So it's pretty straightforward often, if you know which stage of life your product is in, to name the most likely business objectives and put them into your roadmap and have that inform what goes on to the roadmap. Let me give you a real world example. This is a company in the US called Contactually. They sell a CRM essentially for real estate agents. And their whole roadmap is organized by business objectives. This column that says outcome we are seeking on the left, all of these are business objectives. Launch new features or services to increase ASP, that's average sale price. All 3 of the first rows are about different things we're going to do to leverage them into increasing ASP. And then there's improved long-term product usage. That's really about margin and customer lifetime value, and all the rest of them kind of work similarly. Now let's talk about one of the more controversial things in roadmaps, and that's time frames. Often people want to see dates, but the most popular format these days for roadmaps is actually the now, next, later format, which has no dates on it. Now is the stuff we're working on at the moment. Next are the things that we're going to work on after that. And then later are things that are on the roadmap, but are not going to be worked on in the near future. And this answers a lot of the essential questions about, is it on the roadmap and is it soon, without bogging you down in committing to, well, it's going to be February 28th or something like that. And I think that answers most of the questions that you need to answer. There is one other thing that I want to mention before I get to the meat of the roadmap, and that's the disclaimer. The disclaimer is there. It's not just sort of legalese. It's there to actually let the reader know that roadmaps can and frequently do change. And I kind of like to leverage that into a conversation with a stakeholder or a customer to say, you know, I'm changing the roadmap all the time based on everything that I am learning. So teach me something new. Give me feedback. Tell me what your reality is like. And I may actually adjust the roadmap accordingly. This is the disclaimer on GitLab's GitHub's public-facing roadmap about subject to change. Now, the last and possibly most important element of the roadmap is the themes. I call these themes because they are about trying to create a result for the customer without being specific about the deliverables. It's about problems to solve or jobs to be done or needs to fulfill, if you will. It is the questions, not the answers. It's not the features or the solutions. It's needs. It's not features or solutions. Let me illustrate the difference between the two here. This is Mario. We all know Mario. Mario is your potential customer. And so you make for Mario this flower, this power-up. And when he consumes it, he goes twice as fast. He's twice as big. He's invulnerable, and he shoots fireballs. Now, what does Mario want? Does he want your product? Does he want the flower? Well, no, he wants the result of the flower. He wants to win the game. And so he wants to be Super Mario. So when you are thinking about the product, you need to be thinking, how do I create the possibility for Super Mario, rather than how do I, and then that becomes your product or the features of your product. Rather than focusing on having an awesome product, you want to be focusing on having an awesome customer. Let me give you a real world example. This is a real roadmap for a company called Vempathy. They were around a few years ago, and they made software for researchers to be able to use the sensors on the person's phone to actually detect their emotions while they're looking at the screen. And that's good for research if you're going to put a UX in front of them, or a TV ad or a movie trailer, so that you can see what parts resonate with them and what parts don't. So this whole roadmap in the now, next, and future format here in Trello is a list of problems that researcher customer has in order to be successful, in order to do their job of research. Let me give you an example. Participant recruiting for research studies. Recruiting is a job that they have to do in order for them to do their job with the software. In order to use the software to do a study, they've got to recruit participants. You might think, well, that's the customer's problem. But yeah, that's the customer's problem, and that's the whole point. So in order to be successful, Vempathy thought, well, we got to help them solve this problem. So the problem statement is right here on the slide. UX researchers often struggle to get test participants for their studies. The outcome there that the customer is looking for is that every study has the right people in it. And then critically, they've got 3 different ideas about how to solve this problem. We can do a partnership, we can build a tool ourselves, we could integrate with a third party, lots of things we could do. We're going to try these things, prototype them, test them, and see what works. And this item on the roadmap is not retired until something works, until we've solved the problem. The item is on the roadmap is not create a tool, it's solve the problem. That's the right mindset for roadmaps. A bad mindset for roadmaps is we're gonna put on the roadmap that we need to launch version 4.1 of our product, whatever that is. Slightly better would be we're going to launch it in order to create some business result. Even better would be very OKRs, increase signups by 25% by removing certain obstacles with no notion of exactly what we're shipping in the roadmap. Now, you can still answer the question if somebody says, well, what are your plans for increasing signups? Well, we're going to test this, we're going to try that, we have this in development, but the focus is on the outcome that you're looking for. So taking us back to why do we make the wrong thing? I think outcomes are just harder than outputs. We can put stuff on the roadmap and say, well, I think if we do this, this, and this, we'll be good. But we commit too early to that opinion, that uninformed, untested opinion about what outputs will actually drive results. And we put those on the roadmap, and then that becomes the goal. Success is we shipped, but that's not right. That's not what actually makes a difference for our customers, nor does it make a difference for our business. we need to actually incorporate the build, measure, learn loop into the roadmap by describing the problems and then using this scientific method to figure out whether we have solved the problems. I'll give you another real example. Can't tell you the name of this company, but it is a streaming service that you have heard of, not based in the US. Their roadmap format, simple in a spreadsheet here, has a bunch of initiatives in it with quarters, but it's interesting the life cycle that each of their initiatives goes through. Number one is think it, that's a status. Then it's ship it, then it's tweak it. Think it is we're designing it, we're testing ideas, we're figuring out what we want to do. Ship it is we're actually developing it. And then tweak it is it's out there in the world and we are collecting feedback about how well it is or isn't solving the intended problem. And we're going to keep it and tweak it until we hit whatever metric we have here in the last column, like customer satisfaction or cost per contact or something, or meeting the SLA. Once we've done these things, the roadmap item can be retired. Because it's really not what you ship, it's what you solve that counts. And that's what the roadmap should be about. The product manager at Wattify, Ellie Riggio, says, we accept that we don't know what specific features we're going to build, and we give the teams to the freedom to figure it out. Because as I said earlier, product management is not project management. Roadmaps are not projects. They are strategic statements of direction and intent. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I hope it's useful to you. I have only 2 other slides. This one here, this is the credits slide. The book that I referred to a few times is called Product Roadmaps Relaunched. Me and these other 3 fantastic guys wrote it a few years ago for O'Reilly, and it's available on Amazon. You can also, there's a download if you're interested, a checklist for how well your road mapping process works in your company at goroadmaps.com. But I also am just announcing that we have a new online course for product road mapping. It's called the Product Culture's Road Mapping Masterclass. If you go to productculture.com, you can find it on the menu, or if you go directly to academy.productculture.com, you can learn about it. There's a self-paced version, and there is a live classes version. It's got all of the components laid out for you, all of the how-to videos you could possibly need, and we actually did build a roadmap template in Google Slides, and also a template for prioritization that you can turn into your own product roadmap. So hope that is useful as well.